They said the war was over. But the crate that arrived didn't feel like peace. It came sealed in high-grade polymer, soundproofed, marked fragile, diplomatic cargo. Inside wasn't a machine. It was her. Not a soldier. Not a trophy. A woman alien, alert, alive. She stepped out not like property, but like something sharp learning how to breathe again. Skin like silvered ash. Eyes black, unreadable. And silence that didn't ask for permission. They called her a reward. But rewards don't question you. They don't rewire your systems, mock your passwords, teach your toaster to print star maps on bread. They don't sit beside you at night and say nothing, until that silence starts to mean something. And just when he stopped checking the stars for orders, the transmission came. 48 hours. Extraction protocol. Terminate anomaly. She didn't flinch. But he did. Because she wasn't the anomaly. She was the only thing in this place that had made sense. And what started as a cold assignment had become something warmer than survival. So they buried the beacon. Tore the codes from the walls. Let the algae hum, let the AI sing, let the galaxy forget them entirely. Not out of fear. But because they had finally become something that didn't fit in any report. Something nameless. Something worth staying for. The sun hung low and heavy behind the dome, casting a thick amber glow across the worn-out skeleton of Outpost 7K. Light filtered through layers of dust on the glass, painting long shadows on the floor where metal once gleamed but now only rusted. Drones drifted overhead like forgotten thoughts, their frames creaking in slow, lazy arcs. Everything here felt tired. And so did he. Lieutenant Darren Holt stood still, hands in his pockets, boots planted firmly on the stained floor. His uniform, though intact, looked like it had stopped belonging to a soldier a long time ago. The creases told stories the metals never could. His gaze didn't waver from the object in front of him, a sealed crate, sleek and strangely pristine. Reinforced polymer. Temperature controlled. Soundproofed. A red sticker read, cheerfully indifferent, fragile, handled with diplomatic care. He tilted his head, dry humor in his voice. Darren. Perfect. They sent me a fridge. The man beside him, the courier, chuckled nervously, wiping sweat from a collar that seemed too tight for his neck or his conscience. Courier. Not a fridge, Lieutenant. It's your reward. Darren shifted his weight, unimpressed. Darren. If this is another toaster with an attitude problem, I'm going to lose it. Courier. It's organic. There was a pause. A hiss. The crate exhaled, slowly unlocking with a faint whisper of pressure seals breaking. Light spilled across its seams. The air around them seemed to hold its breath. Then, without drama but with precision, she stepped out. And the silence changed. She wasn't monstrous. She wasn't even mechanical. She was alien, yes. Tall, composed, unshakable. Her skin shimmered like ash kissed by moonlight, not smooth, not flawless, but alive in a way that made the air around her feel thinner. Her ears curved back like sleek, metallic leaves, twitching gently, reading the space as if scent alone could tell her whether to trust it. Her eyes found him instantly. Black as deep water. Still, but far from empty. Leara. You're the human. Darren blinked, caught off guard by the clarity in her voice. Darren. You're definitely not a coffee machine. Leara. Unlikely. I hold better conversations. The courier shifted again, struggling to maintain his professional tone. Courier. She's already encoded to your command profile. Fully compliant. Class 4, War Compensation. She didn't flinch. But something cold rippled beneath her words. Leara. You humans have a talent for making slavery sound like paperwork. Darren's eyes didn't leave her. There was no hatred in her voice, only weight. Like her body remembered chains her mind had already unlearned. Darren. Well, could have been worse. They almost gave you to General Mathists. Leara. I'd have set him on fire. He smirked. Couldn't help it. Darren. Smarter than the last floor lamp they gave him. The courier coughed, then backed away like a man escaping a conversation with consequences. His footsteps faded into the distance. They were alone now. And for a long second, neither moved. The station groaned softly in the distance. A dying light flickered overhead, casting gold across her silver skin. Darren didn't speak. Neither did she. But in the quiet, something began. Not a command. Not obedience. Just something else. Something uncertain. Something alive. The corridor stretched out before them like a tired thought, dim, warped, and pulsing with the uneven rhythm of old machines trying to remember how to function. The flickering lights weren't just broken, they seemed uncertain, as if debating whether to stay alive or finally give in. Gravity dipped and surged in soft waves, causing loose tools to drift gently, only to thud back down with a mechanical sigh. Somewhere in the walls, the outpost groaned a low, tired sound like metal trying to breathe. Darren walked ahead without speaking, hands casually in his pockets. He moved like someone who had memorized every flaw in the floor, every groan in the ceiling. Behind him, Leara moved with the same silence, but none of the weight. She didn't follow. She flowed. As if the broken corridors bowed slightly just to accommodate her passing. She wasn't observing. She was reading the place, its scars, its temperature, its shadows. And the outpost, somehow, seemed to notice her back. Darren. That's the command center. Ignore the dancing cats. They are legacy files I can't delete. Believe me, I've tried. Leara. Softly. This place smells like melted lies, and abandoned promises. He gave a slight smirk, one corner of his mouth tilting without much effort. Darren. Sounds about right. Welcome to paradise. They turned into the kitchen, if it could still be called that. The room buzzed with uneven voltage. Panels blinked in and out, as if remembering they had a job. The counter sloped. A rusted pipe hummed a broken harmony against the wall. The food processor sat in the corner like a sulking relic from a better time. Leara stepped forward and placed a hand on its control panel. No hesitation. No question. Her fingers danced across the interface with calm authority. A soft click, a low hiss, and the machine obeyed. A stream of iridescent nutrient paste slid into a bowl. Neon green. Gently pulsing. The kind of food that looked like it had opinions. Darren sat across from her with his usual tray of ready-dread pasta and protein regrets. He took a bite and grimaced. She watched him with quiet interest, like she was studying a creature that willingly punished itself. Then, without ceremony, she spoke. Leara. I won't escape. I won't harm you. And I won't call you master. She said it like a truth she didn't care to repeat. No edge. No emotion. Just a line drawn in invisible ink. He didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He swallowed, set down his fork, then met her eyes without trying to read them. Darren. Deal. He reached toward her, offering his fork, his food, or maybe just a gesture no one else would see. Darren. But only if you handle the dishes. She blinked once, and for the first time, the corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile, but something near it. Leara. Then we're at war again. The lights above them flickered once more, as if the station itself couldn't decide whether to interrupt. But nothing more followed. Just silence. Not the kind that fills a room after something ends. The kind that waits just long enough for something to begin. The lights woke slowly, blinking as if disturbed from some uneasy dream. Their glow was faint, almost apologetic, casting soft tremors of shadow against the outpost walls. Somewhere in the distance, a muffled pop cracked the silence, followed by a deeper hum that shouldn't have been there. The kind of sound that usually meant something important was on fire. Darren hit the floor with a grunt, rolling halfway off his cot and onto a data pad that chirped once in protest beneath his ribs. His legs tangled in the edge of his blanket like he'd fought sleep and lost. One day, he muttered. Just one normal damn day. The AI chimed in with its usual unwelcome cheer, far too awake for the hour. Explosion detected. Kitchen processor offline. Filtration system, flaming. Please proceed with alarm, Darren. Still rubbing one eye, Darren grabbed the fire extinguisher leaning against the bulkhead and stumbled barefoot down the hallway. His shirt was half-buttoned. His mood was not. As the kitchen door slid open, smoke greeted him like an old friend with bad intentions. The air was thick, biting, tainted with melted wiring and whatever passed for synthetic seasoning in the outpost's food system. Sparks crackled from the wall above the processor. The overhead lights pulsed once, dimmed, then resigned themselves to flickering shadows. And there she was. Leara stood at the center of it all, framed by smoke and small-scale destruction, holding a scorched capacitor in one hand like a trophy. Her silver-gray skin caught the dim light and shimmered faintly beneath the haze. She wore the same expression she always did when something should have gone wrong but hadn't, according to her. Good news, she announced, eyes bright with triumph. I fixed the airflow problem. Darren stared at the rising smoke, then at her, then back again. You blew up the filtration system. She tilted her head as if truly considering the accusation. Semantics. The extinguisher hissed as he sprayed down the processor. A low whine died with a final spark. The smell of fried plastic gave way to damp chemical fog. For a while, nothing else was said. He moved around her carefully, stepping over wires and debris. She leaned against the counter, brushing ash from her elbow with elegant indifference, as if none of it had anything to do with her. There was no tension. No accusation. Just the rhythm of two people who had grown used to disaster, and to each other. It was in the way she didn't apologize. And in the way he didn't ask her to. And somewhere in the quiet, beneath the buzz of old circuits and the faint crackle of smoke, a strange new kind of familiarity settled into place. Not comfort. Not peace. But maybe, the beginning of both. Above them, the dome curved white and silent, catching the light of 1,000 unmoving stars. From this height, the world below seemed to disappear, swallowed by the hush of space and the slow breath of artificial wind. The outpost's hum faded into the distance. What remained was the sound of stillness and the sky. Leara sat on the rooftop ledge, her silhouette calm against the black canvas of night. No helmet. No armor. Just bare skin brushed by wind, eyes lifted toward stars that looked back with ancient indifference. She didn't shiver. Didn't speak. She looked like she belonged there, half in this world, half somewhere far older. Darren climbed up without a word, the metal cups in his hands rattling softly with every step. He eased down beside her, careful not to disturb the quiet that wrapped around them like a second atmosphere. "You know, if this dome cracks," he said, voice low and dry, "you'll be cosmic jam." She didn't even blink. "Then let me be cherry flavored." He smirked, but not at her. Just at the absurdity of the moment. "Why do you always climb things?" Her answer came slow, unforced. "Because your kind builds walls," she said, still watching the stars. "And mine learn to see over them." The words didn't land hard. They didn't need to. They just stayed there, in the space between them, settling like stardust on the edge of understanding. He handed her one of the cups. The metal was warm in her palm. She sniffed the contents with the same suspicion she gave anything human-made. "This poison?" He nodded once. "Only emotionally." She took a sip. Her face twisted. Then relaxed. "Disgusting," she said softly. "I love it." The laugh that escaped her was small, unguarded. Like it hadn't meant to come out but did anyway. It carried into the dome, bounced gently off the glass, and vanished. They sat in silence after that. But it wasn't empty. It was a silence that understood something had shifted. Not enough to name, but enough to stay. The engineering bay hummed with a kind of tired tension, the way a room does when it's been left awake too long. Lights blinked in staggered rhythms, never in sync. A loose wire sparked gently in the far corner, the glow soft, almost shy. The air was cool, tinged with ionized dust and something faintly metallic like old arguments that hadn't fully settled. Leara was already there. Kneeling by the AI interface, her hands moved across the panel with fluid confidence. She didn't hesitate. Didn't pause. She worked like she wasn't fixing a system, but reminding it who it used to be. Darren watched from the doorway. Quiet. Familiar. "You really enjoy breaking my outpost," he said, voice low, dry with just enough heat. Without turning, she replied, "You call this security? I could break into your system with a spoon, and a mood swing." He stepped closer, arms crossed loosely across his chest. The blue light from the diagnostics washed across her face, cool, serene, focused. "You already reprogrammed the door to insult me?" She didn't even blink. That wasn't an insult. That was feedback. Her tone was calm. Sincere, even. But there was a glint in her eye, a flicker of amusement she didn't bother to hide. The kind of look that made it impossible to tell where sarcasm ended and warning began. He exhaled through his nose, slow. Said nothing more. And she went back to work, as if she'd always been meant to sit in that broken corner of the station, taming its rebellious systems with nothing more than sharp fingers and quiet defiance. Much later that night, when the station had fallen into its usual uneasy stillness, he found her again. Curled on the bench beneath the dome's glass, fast asleep. No armor. No boots. One hand curled loosely beneath her chin, the other resting against her side like instinct still hadn't fully let her go. For a long moment, he just stood there. Watching her sleep felt like eavesdropping on something sacred. He didn't speak. Didn't smile. Didn't move. He simply stayed. Because in that soft, breathless space between circuits and silence, the war was far away. And for once, that was enough. The desert unfolded around them like a forgotten page burned at the edges, heavy with silence. The wind carried no comfort, only the slow churn of red dust rising in lazy spirals, brushing across their boots and vanishing just as quickly. Leara walked ahead without looking back. Her steps steady. Focused. As if this place still spoke to her, even after all this time. Darren followed, not out of curiosity, but because some part of him understood this wasn't a place she wanted to reach alone. Next time, he muttered, sweat collecting at the base of his neck, remind me to fake a medical emergency? She didn't reply. She didn't need to. The silence between them already said more than sarcasm ever could. The wind shifted. A low sigh passed across the landscape. And there, half buried in the slope of a dune, they found it. What was once a refugee pod now sat broken and blackened by fire, its hull collapsed inward like something had tried to crush its memory. The exterior was charred, cracked open in long, uneven seams. Time hadn't been kind. But the shape it was still Varley. Still hers. She knelt beside it. Quiet. Precise. With both hands, she brushed away the sand until a faded symbol surfaced, a spiral nested inside a star. Faint, but unmistakable. My cousin was on one of these. The words were soft, not fragile. They didn't carry grief, only the weight of what had been lived through. She didn't tremble. Didn't ask for sympathy. She simply sat with it, as if sharing silence with the dead was part of her ritual. Darren stepped closer, his voice gone. He lowered his head not because he felt guilt, but because some things deserve stillness. And this was one of them. She would have liked you, Leara said, still tracing the edges of the symbol with her fingers. He blinked, unsure how to answer. Yeah? She into bad posture and emotional repression. Her eyes met his, but there was no teasing. She liked people who asked questions. Nothing else passed between them. No music. No monologue. Just wind. And red dust. And two people standing beside what war had left behind, neither heroes, neither victims. Just survivors. And for a moment, the war returned. Not through sound or gunfire but through memory. Breathing quietly between their words. Dusk settled over the outpost like a hell-breath dance, metallic, waiting. The sky was the color of old bruises, the kind that never quite fade. And through that fading light, a shape appeared. No warning. No ID ping. Just the hum of precision. The shuttle descended in silence, met black, sharp-edged, designed to land like a verdict. Dust spiraled in slow motion as it touched down. The earth didn't shake. It submitted. The ramp hissed open, and Commander Revan stepped into the cooling air. Polished boots. Perfect seams. His face didn't carry anger, only policy. Lieutenant Holt, he said without looking up. We're here to assess your anomalies. Darren stood still, hands loose at his sides. The corner of his mouth curled slightly, like humor tried to surface and thought better of it. The homicidal toaster, he replied, or the alien woman. Revan didn't blink. The alien. She was already standing at the edge of the landing bay, arms crossed, back straight still, but not passive. Her presence was too sharp for that. She has a name, Leara said, voice low and smooth. And a pulse rifle. Neither of them smiled. The inspection was methodical. Brutal in its quiet. They went through everything: logs, manifests, thermal readings, communication scans. Nothing said aloud, but every question carried the same accusation: why was she still here? Darren gave them facts. Not apologies. When the questions circled back a third time, his answer stopped them cold. She's not a reward, he said evenly. She's a person. Revan wrote something down without a word. His pen moved. His face didn't. Leara turned and walked out. She didn't flinch. Didn't break stride. Didn't leave a single word behind. But the silence that followed her exit wasn't empty. It was sharpened. Deliberate. The kind of silence you only hear right before something finally snaps. The room pulsed in shades of green, dim, fluid, alive. Not from artificial lighting, but from the algae itself. Glowing softly in rows of hydro trays, it shimmered with quiet intelligence, each pulse a slow rhythm, like the room was breathing in unison with something older than them both. She moved through it with instinct, not thought. A tilt of the wrist. A quiet scoop. Fingers trailing through nutrient gel as if it were silk. She didn't speak. Didn't need to. The algae responded to her presence like a memory trying to stay awake. He stood at the edge of the glow, his voice barely above a murmur. Revan wants to relocate you? She didn't stop. Didn't turn. You didn't have to fight him. I wanted to. There was no pause between them, only silence. A different kind. Heavier, but not unwelcome. Like something unspoken had finally agreed to be named. She still didn't look at him. They'll come back, she said, quiet as breath. With orders. And bigger guns. He leaned against the door frame, arms crossed not in defiance, but in calm. Then we build a bigger toaster? It caught her off guard. The way his voice bent the tension just enough to let light through. She laughed. Short. Dry. And real. The kind of sound that doesn't get rehearsed, only released. It slipped out of her before she could think to stop it. She wiped her hands slowly, then reached across the space between them unheard, uncertain, and let her fingers find his. Not gripping. Not asking. Just resting there. Like something finally allowing itself to land. He didn't pull away. And the algae glowed a little warmer. The stars had settled into a different shape. Slight, but certain. 2 weeks had passed and no second shuttle ever came. No echoes from command. No sudden knocks. Just the slow exhale of time moving forward without permission. In the quiet, they rebuilt the wreckage. The algae hummed now low and melodic, glowing in waves that pulsed with memory. The central AI had learned to sing, not well, but with feeling, crooning fragments of Varley jazz through old speakers late into the night. Even the toaster had changed. It now printed maps onto bread star charts, crude but accurate, burned gently into the crust like someone trying to remember where they were. They sat beneath the dome again, side by side. Steam curled from their mugs. The silence wasn't heavy this time, it was deliberate. The kind that only comes when words aren't necessary anymore. He watched the sky, then turned slightly, voice barely above the hush. You were the weirdest gift I ever got. She didn't turn. Just lifted her mug in quiet agreement. And you were the worst reward I've ever been forced to tolerate. They touched cups. No ceremony. No smirk. Just the soft clink of metal meeting metal. Then the chime. Faint. Flat. Inevitable. A transmission, unfolding in the air like a forgotten promise. Command directive received. Extraction scheduled in 48 hours. They didn't flinch. She set her mug down slowly, her gaze still lifted. We have 48 hours to make this outpost disappear? He nodded, already standing. I'll cloak the station. Her tone didn't change. Calm. Certain. You bribed the algae? He paused, hand on the panel, one corner of his mouth lifting. They already like me better? The door hissed open. And without another word, they moved together, towards something they hadn't dared to name. Not rebellion. Not escape. Something quieter. Something that felt like staying. The crater was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that follows destruction, but the kind that arrives after something is finally laid to rest. They stood at the edge, framed by the last light of a dying sun, its amber glow brushing gently across the moon's uneven skin. The war beacon lay between them, scorched, rusted, long silent. A remnant of the old world, once meant to summon ruin, now ready to be forgotten. No words were spoken. They didn't need them. Together, they lowered it into the earth. Not with ceremony. Just intention. Layer by layer, they buried it beneath dust and silence, until nothing of it remained but the absence it left behind. Later, they found themselves under the dome again. The stars stretched wide above them, pale and endless, reflecting faintly in the glass. The hum of the outpost faded behind them, as if even the machines had chosen to whisper. Their mugs sat untouched beside them. Neither needed warmth now. His voice broke the silence, soft and uncertain. What are we, now? She didn't move. Just breathed. Something new. He reached out. She didn't pull away. No declarations. No names. Just the slow, quiet choosing of one another in a world that no longer demanded anything else from them. Somewhere deep inside the walls, the AI began to hum. A low, almost tender melody. Half jazz. Half memory. A panel light blinked twice, then settled. The toaster chimed one final note as if acknowledging the moment. And beyond the dome, the galaxy turned silent, patient, indifferent, but still spinning. In the shadow of a forgotten war, two strangers found something no one expected them to: stillness. Not the quiet of defeat, but the kind that comes after choosing not to run anymore. She was never meant to stay. He was never meant to care. And yet here they were. No medals. No speeches. Just a buried beacon, a humming AI, and the warmth of something quietly defiant growing between them. Not love. Not yet. But the kind of bond that makes silence feel full. The kind that lets a man sleep without armor, and a woman breathe without flinching. Out there, the galaxy still spins loud, broken, vast. But in this small corner, forgotten by command and time, they chose something else. And sometimes, that's enough. Thank you for traveling this far with them. If this story stirred something in you, stay. There are more worlds to explore. More echoes to follow. And more truths that only reveal themselves in the dark. Subscribe if you haven't. The next transmission is already on its way.